Well, this day has several titles to it. First of all, it is the last day of the year, but that's the calendar year, not the liturgical year. It is also known as the seventh day in the octave of Christmas. That obviously varies depending on what day Christmas falls on. So Wednesday after Christmas is not always known as the seventh day in the octave of Christmas, but this year it is. It is New Year's Eve. And so this is the last day we're going to hear the readings for 2025, which actually encompass part of the year we're in now and part, actually not all, part of the year we just left. But it's also, since it's part of the octave of Christmas, it still continues this, and the Christmas season continues. So we're going to actually continue with these readings much later. We're going to continue with them, actually, well, I shouldn't say much later, but actually starting on Friday, we're going to go back. Let me make sure that's true. Yeah, we're going back to 1 John 2, 22 through 28. But today, we are still in 1 John 2, 18 to 21. And the focus today is understanding the Antichrists, or the Antichrists. And here we have, and this is an important discussion because people are always looking for the Antichrist. Kind of an interesting little story. I think I mentioned it yesterday, but I'll mention it again. People used to describe Ronald Reagan as the Antichrist because his number would be 666, and he had six letters in each of his first, middle, and last names. Obviously that's the Antichrist. Well, by the way, the 666 does not come from anything super mysterious. In Roman time, because they used letters for numbers, you could spell out words and you could spell things out, or you could symbolize someone's name by numbers. Obviously not with Roman numbers, because you just use the same name. And so Nero could be used however they spelled it in Roman times. Nero's name came up to 666. I don't know if you've heard this meme that's out. It's actually kind of funny. People are saying that the new mayor of New York, starting midnight tonight, actually, the new mayor of New York, Mayor Zoran Mamdani, is going to insist in all schools they teach Arabic numbers. And the reason why that's funny is those are the numbers we use in school anyway, the numbers we're using right now. Those are called Arabic numbers because the Romans used these other numbers, which were letters. We know them all, V and I and X and M and D and C. And somehow Nero's name spelled 666. I don't know. I'd have to figure that out, and we can just take everyone's word for it, I guess, at this point. And that's why everyone will say 666 actually represents Nero. However, what Paul is saying, and remember, Paul's writings are the middle of the last half of the first century. The book of Revelation, where that number comes from, actually comes from early in the second century. It is actually, not only is it the last book in the Bible, it's the last book in the Bible that was written. So it's the later. So this is long before the book of Revelation was written. And he's saying, well, as he literally says, you've heard that Antichrist is coming. Hey, guess what? There already have been Antichrists. There's been lots of them. They've already appeared. Now, he talks about this as the last hour. Now, what does that mean? Because obviously it doesn't work because it's 2,000 years later, which is, I don't know how many hours that is, but it's quite a bit. So what does he mean by that? This is the last hour. Well, what he's talking about is this is the last period of salvation history, which has been the case since Pentecost Sunday. So we are in the last period of salvation history. So in fact, it is the last hour. We are waiting for Jesus to come back. I've told you all the prophecies that have taken place already that have happened already prove that the prophecies we are waiting for will take place. And we do understand all that. So he's saying this is the last hour. Now, how does he describe an antichrist? And it's really just a very simple description. Anyone who describes the Son and the Father as anyone who denies, rather, the Son and the Father. So he says the liar is the one who denies Jesus is the Christ. So that's one of the things he says. And the Christ means he is the Messiah. So anyone who denies the Son and the Father, that makes them the Antichrist. Well, there are a lot of those. And so we understand that. And that may be one of the things to look at, because there's people always focused, we have to look for the Antichrist. What are the signs of the... Let all that stuff go. Let all that stuff go. Although there are things you may look at that may happen and you go, wow, that's important. I'll give you the best example I can always bring up is the restoration of Israel is an important sign. All the world is looking to the nation of Israel. So, yeah, it's another sign. Is a nation of Israel, the God of the nation of Israel, I guess is the way I should put it. That is a truth there. That is true. So we understand all that, and we see these prophecies coming true, and these are greater signs. And we do expect Jesus will come back. But remember, everything happens in the fullness of time. And basically, the way it appears, the way it's described, is not so much Jesus comes back tomorrow, but when humanity has reached its fullness, and the sign that it's reached its fullness is when it's at the brink of its own self-destruction. This is just my opinion. That's when Jesus would come back, because that would be the fullness. Now, that's just my prediction. I don't know. And of course, you have to think about, we go back to 2,000 years ago. Now, in the Roman Empire, they believed that the empire was eternal. They believed that the Forum was eternal. The Forum, of course, was ultimately not only destroyed, it was lost, and it was discovered in an excavation under the auspices of the Pope back centuries ago. Not quite more than a millennium, but centuries ago. Many centuries ago. And if we can use the Roman letters as numbers, we can say more than M, more than D, but not more than M plus D. There you go. I think. Somewhere over 1,000 years ago. No, not quite, was it? Yeah, no. Maybe about 1,000 years ago. We'll do that. So, and they found the Forum. But people believed at the time the Forum was eternal. It would always be here. Now, we're living in a time where there is literally this group of scientists that have this, what's it called? The doomsday clock. And, they tell you that we're this close to doomsday or whatever. And I'm not sure when the clock was put together. I think it was after World War II. But, so these ideas of the end of the world that we see today did not exist in the time of St. Paul. Of course, obviously, if they did exist, they wouldn't have been understood worldwide because there was no communications network. So St. Paul is talking to us about that understanding of the Antichrist. And the way he is saying it may sound like that already people were talking about the coming of the Antichrist. There's an interesting story. Actually, true story. It's an interesting anecdote, I guess is a better word to say. Cardinal Burke brought up, it was during the time, he and several cardinals and bishops had some issues with with Pope Francis, and he had brought up that maybe the church is undergoing the persecution that it was to encounter according to our catechism. I don't know if you knew that, as part of the end times. In fact, it's here. If you have a catechism locally, or if you have a way, you can obviously look for this on the internet. Strangely enough, you really can't look this up on the Vatican's website of the catechism because it's not divided into numbers. So if I tell you the number, it's not going to mean anything to you. It is divided into numbers in each paragraph, but you have to know the number. You have to know which article it is before you can get to the number. It doesn't make any sense, but anyway, Article 7 is where you'll find it. And if you can find Article 7, which is, I guess, point 1, he will come again in glory. And then you go to number 675. And here it says, before Christ's second coming, the church must pass through a final trial that will shake the faith of many believers. The persecution that accompanies her pilgrimage on earth will unveil the mystery of iniquity in the form of a religious deception, offering men as apparent solution to their problems at the price of apostasy from the truth. The supreme religious deception is that of the Antichrist, a pseudo-messianism by which man glorifies himself in the place of God and of his Messiah come in the flesh. And, going back to what St. Paul says, there have been many antichrists, and there are many antichrists. We can look at that in the light of the people who are saying that we will be able to create the perfect world on our own. Well, we can't. It's a deception. But the other thing is, there are people, I know this is crazy, but there are people, you actually can find it in the writings of, Yuval Noah Harari. Homo Deus is one of his books, which is Latin for God-man. And he's talking about the ultimate success. I mean, it's exactly what this talks about, of using technology to create eternal life. This is the first temptation. It's the fullness of it. You can find that. So that stuff is all real, what they're talking about. And none of this stuff would have been possible in the time of St. Paul. It just wouldn't, especially the technology part. And that's one of the issues we're dealing with. One of the things I discovered, and I brought this up, it's one of those things that I said, you watch, this is what's going to eventually come true. And sure enough, it did. And you can see that a lot in David Daleiden. I said you would come to a point where you would see a market for aborted baby parts. And we all know that's one of the things that David Daleiden discovered. Now, apparently, the finances involved, they're saying now, are just for shipping and costs and stuff like that. Assuming that is true, we'll assume that is true, we can go to the next step and say, but in the future, that won't be true. And I recognized that when people were attacking the church. And I says, we're looking at who it was and what party they were connected and all the other stuff. I said, this is all about, they want to silence the church's opposition to abortion. And what are they trying to do? Their ultimate goal is exactly that. And why are they trying to do that? Because through science, they're trying to create eternal life. It is the hope of the first temptation. You will be like gods. And this is exactly what's being taught here, none of which was possible in the first century. So when we look at the first century, we can see that here you see St. Paul saying there already are antichrists. And I suppose in a way he's saying, don't go looking for see who it's going to be. Don't worry about that, because that's already happening. But now we see it to an intense degree. It continues, the Antichrist deception already begins to take shape in the world every time the claim is made to realize within history that messianic hope, which can only be realized beyond history through the eschatological judgment, which is the final judgment. The church has rejected even modified forms of this falsification of the kingdom to come under the name of millenarianism, which pretty much is passed on because that was the new millennium, the new millennium. Sorry, I'm having trouble pronouncing words today. Okay, especially the intrinsic, perverse political form of a secular messianism. All right, the church will enter the glory of the kingdom only through this final Passover, when she will follow her Lord in his death and resurrection. The kingdom will be fulfilled then not by a historic triumph of the church through a progressive ascendancy, but only by God's victory over the final unleashing of evil, which is what I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, which will cause his bride to come down from heaven, new earth, remember that? God's triumph over the revolt of evil will take the form of the last judgment after the final cosmic upheaval of this passing world. That's from the Catechism, and that's teaching us of the end of the world. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll talk to you on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media podcast. Subscribe, pass the word. I really appreciate all the likes that you are giving to us. That's wonderful. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. And so we've been talking about these powerful words of St. Paul in today's first reading about the last hour and the Antichrist. But remember what we've been talking all along. In order for the second coming to happen, it has to be the culmination of time. And the sign of the culmination of time is these competing forces, those that focus on Christ and those that focus on our salvation through humanity, which in our time we can recognize through human technology. And again, go look at the writings of Yuval Noah Harari, and you can see this is exactly what he's talking about. And he's not talking about this as a Christian. He's an atheist. He's talking about promoting these ideas. Homo Deus is the classic example. This is exactly what the Catechism talks about, and his writings post-date the Catechism. And this is the teaching of the Church, that yes, there will be this millenarianism in a sense, but we're kind of passing that because the millennium is here and millenarium doesn't happen. But we're living at a time where people are saying technology will be our salvation, and they're changing their values. So that, as I said, you're eventually in the future, you are going to see a market for baby parts, a literal, like a stock market for baby parts. I'll tell you right now, that is going to happen. You can say, well, it's not happening, or whatever. That's not the whole. Fine, I'm not talking now. I'm not talking now. There is that aspect of baby parts. We've talked about that. David DeLyon talks about that. But I'm talking about the future. I'm telling you, will see a market for baby parts. And you might say, and some people may say, well, that's not going to happen in this country. The world is big. It may actually be going on in other countries. It would not surprise me. So you will see that. And so what we're looking at is that reality, this whole focus on human technology will bring us to the time where people think they can create the perfect world through technology. And we're seeing that now, the AI stuff and everything else. However, all of this is moving us towards when Jesus will come back. And Jesus will come back when all of this comes to its fullness and people discover this is creating destruction, not life. And I'm talking about all. I'm not talking about just what I've just. I mean everything, all the ultimate of everything in technology, including things that we're not even aware of right now. So all of that will come, and then will come the end of the world. Remember the words of Alexander Dugin when the war broke out on October 7th in between Hamas and Israel, Gaza and Israel. Remember what he said: you're not going to understand this war if you don't understand eschatology. And eschatology is the study of the end of the world. So you look at all that, you understand that, and you see this is what St. Paul is talking about. Yes, there are already antichrists. Don't worry about it. You focus on following Christ, and that is the true solution. You focus on understanding that Christ is the Savior. He is the Son of God, and he's leading us to the Father. And, the Holy Spirit is, the Son, the Holy Spirit, all leading us to the Father. And so we recognize all that, and we see that. And this is what St. Paul is talking about. On this last day of the year, remember, this doesn't always fall on December 31st. It falls on Wednesday. Well, I guess it would fall on December 31st. I'm sorry, yes, but it wouldn't always necessarily fall on Wednesday. That's what I was trying to say. But it falls and on December 31st. The seventh day of the octave of Christmas. So we're recognizing that. We're seeing that yes, there is that reality that we are going to the culmination of time, but we still don't know when that is, obviously. But don't be focused on looking for these antichrists, because there are already tons of them. And what is the sign? That they deny the Father and the Son. That they say, and basically when you put all that together, you realize that we don't have to listen to, that Jesus is a myth. We don't have to listen to Jesus anymore. This is what I'm saying, is what people are saying. I'm not talking me teaching that. We don't have to listen to Jesus anymore. He's a myth. He never existed, all this other stuff. Well, that's the teaching of the Antichrist, or the spirit of the Antichrist. So what do you do with that? You don't worry about it. You don't focus on it. You focus on following Christ. That's important. And always make sure your focus is to be faithful to Christ. And being faithful to Christ does not mean listening to some online influencer in the Catholic world telling you that you're going to hell because you go to a Novus Ordo Mass, which, by the way, Novus Ordo is not the proper term for the Mass. So when they use that, that should tell you something too. I mean, don't listen to these people, or that's the sign of the end of the world. No, it isn't. But what is the sign of the end of the world is what you already see, of the culmination, of the approaching culmination of time, which could be another millennium, could be 100 millennia, we don't know. Could be tomorrow, we don't know. Is this creating the ultimate utopia, which is what people are always trying to do, utopia through technology. And there you go. And it's not. It's going to fail miserably. And once it fails absolutely miserably, you can expect the Calvary that will come back. And the Calvary is Jesus himself. So that's one of the things that we're looking at here. So as we are here, the night before 2026, and many people are doing their New Year's resolutions and everything else. And a lot of people say, well, make a resolution, but don't, if you're going to make a resolution, be focused on it. If you're going to go on a diet, but make sure it's a good diet, and make sure it's a sustainable diet. If you're going to say, as of tomorrow, I'm only going to eat bananas, well, that's not a sustainable diet. It's not even a healthy diet. But as of tomorrow, I'm going to go on a healthy food plan that will help me to lose weight and get to where I should be. Well, that's a better example. I'm on a healthy food plan. This is not a paid endorsement. I'm on Noom. I've been on Noom for years. And when I've gone off Noom, not only do I lose weight, but I don't feel as good. And so obviously during Christmas, I hate the word cheated. Can we say I cheated? No. It's just I went off the food plan. I just made it clear. When I went on the cruise, I did the same thing. I went off the food plan, and I don't feel good when I do that. But I enjoy. You want to enjoy Christmas. That's part of the issue of being Catholic. Catholics are called to celebrate when it's time to celebrate, and to do penance when it's time to do penance, and so be penitential when it's time to be penitential. We're not called to always be penitential, and we're not called to always celebrate. We're called to focus more on celebration than penitential. You know that. In Lent is 6 weeks. Easter is 7 weeks for exactly that reason. We're called to celebrate more than penitential. We're called to celebrate our life in the Lord more than be penitential. But the reason for being penitential is to draw us closer to the Lord. So if you are on a food plan, or you plan to go on a diet, and all of a sudden you come to this point where you're going to have a big birthday party or something like that and say, well, no, the only thing I can do is I can eat Brussels sprouts. Well, no, go off, have yourself a good time, but go back on it the next day. They told me a story a long time ago when I was on Weight Watchers, that there was a guy who they served cake one day at Weight Watchers because it was a celebration of I don't know whether it was someone's birthday or something, and it led him to go off the diet completely, gained all his weight back. Not because of Weight Watchers, but because he hadn't focused in his time things that you just have to let go of this discipline. And if you don't, then the discipline will come back to haunt you. In other words, you'll just finally come to a point and say, I'm done, and then you'll go the absolute opposite direction. I've seen that many times. Maybe I'll talk about a story on the other side of the break. But you're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We're here every single Monday through Friday. We'll be right back. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. Tomorrow is the Solemnity of the Mother of God. It's also in the church. It's an optional solemnity, or optional, day of the World Day of Peace in the church. So you actually, I don't know if it's still true. It used to be you could choose whichever readings. But tomorrow we're going to look at the readings for Mary, the Mother of God, the Solemnity of Mary. It is, we're going to be looking at Numbers, Galatians, and Luke. We're going to be focusing on Numbers, obviously, because it is a special reading about the special blessing that is in the Jewish world. And that's it. So I want to go back to a principle that I talked about earlier. Just before the break. Yeah, if you're too strict with your discipline, there'll come a point where it will, you won't be able to do it anymore, and then you're going to go to the absolute opposite direction. So if you do something, say for example, you're going to go on a diet tomorrow, and you have a very strict diet so that there are times that you're going to have a celebration and everyone else is having birthday cake and you're eating a Brussels sprout, that's going to come back to haunt you. And what is going to come back eventually, to come to the point says, I'm not going to do this anymore, and then you're going to eat birthday cake like it's going out of style. So that's why you always want to focus into your discipline times that you just let it go. And yeah, if it's a diet, you're going to gain weight. You're going to gain a few pounds, but then you put that in, and then you return to your discipline, and that's what works. We'll be back tomorrow on the first day of the year. See you then. The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.